Chosen one, I need you to pause before this goes any further, not to prepare you for what comes next, because what I am about to tell you happened while you were not paying attention to it, while you were focused on surviving, while you were just trying to make it through another day without falling apart completely. You were not in a battle. You were the battle. And while you were carrying what you were carrying, something happened on the other side of what your eyes can see that made the most calculated, ancient, patient enemy in all of creation stop everything he was doing. Not because you attacked him, not because you declared war on him, not because you showed up in prayer with perfect faith and unshakable confidence, because you kept being who you are, in circumstances specifically designed to make you become someone else. And he had never seen that before. Not in exactly this form, not in this specific configuration of pressure and persistence, not in you. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on every notification. What I am building toward in this transmission is the kind of understanding that permanently changes how you interpret every hard thing that has happened in your life. If you are already subscribed, that says something about you. You came back, and the ones who keep coming back are exactly who this is prepared for. Write 777 in the comments if you have ever been in a situation that should have broken you, and walked out of it still being who you were when you walked in, because I need you to understand what that actually was. Stay until the very end. What I am building toward does not arrive early. Let me tell you something about armies before I tell you what happened to this one. An army is not simply a collection of forces. An army is a coordinated strategy. Every unit has a function. Every attack has a sequence. Every campaign has a logic that runs beneath the visible engagement. A logic that says, if we apply this much pressure in this direction for this long, the result will be this. The adversary does not fight randomly. He is not disorganized. He is not making guesses. He has been studying human behavior for the entire span of recorded history and beyond. He knows patterns that psychologists have only begun to map. He knows which specific combinations of loss, disappointment, isolation, and shame produce which specific outcomes in which specific personality types. He has watched millions of human beings move through difficulty, and he knows with very high accuracy what breaks a person and what does not. He builds campaigns the way generals build campaigns. Identified target, assessed vulnerabilities, selected strategy, deployed forces in sequence, expected result. And then he turns to a soul like yours, and something in the calculation does not work. I want to take you to a specific moment in Scripture that almost no one talks about in this context. 2 Kings chapter 6. The prophet Elisha and his servant are in the city of Dothan. The king of Aram has sent a great army with horses and chariots to surround the city and capture Elisha. The servant wakes up, looks out, and sees the army surrounding them. And he says to Elisha, "What shall we do?" Elisha says something that sounds like irrational confidence. "Do not be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." The servant cannot see what Elisha is talking about. From where he stands, the math is simple and devastating. An army surrounds them. There are two of them. And then Elisha prays one of the most unusual prayers in the entire Hebrew Bible. He does not pray for deliverance. He does not pray for an escape route. He prays, "Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see." And the servant's eyes are opened, and he sees the mountain full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. The army of fire was already there, was already surrounding them, was already occupying the territory. The servant was not wrong about the danger. He was wrong about what was already in position around them. Now I need you to hear this carefully. The servant had no way of knowing what was there, not because it was not real, because he did not yet have eyes to see it. The protection was already deployed before he looked out the window, before he saw the threat, before he prayed, before Elisha prayed. It was already there. And the only thing that changed when Elisha prayed was not the deployment. It was the perception. This is the first layer of what happened to you. The army that came against you was real. I am not going to minimize what you went through by suggesting that the difficulty was not actual, or that the attack was not coordinated, or that the seasons that felt most devastating were somehow less than they appeared. They were real. The losses were real. The betrayals were real. The prayers that felt like they were dissolving into silence were real prayers prayed in real pain from a real person who genuinely did not know if anything was reaching anything. I am not going to wrap that in language that makes it seem smaller than it was. But here is what I need you to understand about the campaign that was designed against you. Every coordinated assault requires a theory about the target, an assumption about what the target is made of, a model of how the target will respond under specific conditions. The adversary's theory about you was based on everything he had observed, based on what he had seen work against people with similar profiles, based on what the accumulated weight of what you were carrying was supposed to produce. His theory said, under this level of sustained pressure, this specific kind of person stops. Not because he was wrong about the pressure. The pressure was calibrated correctly, because he was wrong about you. And when a carefully constructed military campaign produces the wrong result, that is not a minor miscalculation. That is a fundamental intelligence failure. It means the assessment of the target was flawed at its root. It means everything built on that assessment has to be reconsidered. He built an army on a wrong assumption about who you are. And when the army executed the strategy perfectly and the strategy failed, it was not the army that was the problem. It was the intelligence. Let me show you something in the book of Job that most people skip over because they are focused on the suffering. Job, chapter 1, verse 8. God says to the adversary, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. There is no one on earth like him." This is God speaking about a specific person to the one who would become that person's most concentrated opposition. And what God is saying is not simply that Job is good or faithful or righteous, though he was all of those things. God is saying this one is in a category that you have not seen before. There is no one like him. And then the adversary makes his argument. He says Job is only faithful because God has protected him. Remove the hedge and watch what the faithfulness actually is. The adversary is not wrong about how most humans work. His model of human behavior is accurate for the vast majority of cases. Faithfulness that is conditional on comfort is extremely common. Faith that holds as long as the holding is not too costly is everywhere. His mistake is not his theory of human behavior in general. His mistake is his theory of this specific person. And the test that follows is not God punishing Job. It is God allowing the adversary to run the experiment on someone whose outcome the adversary is already wrong about. Job goes through what he goes through. The losses come in waves. The friends arrive with their perfectly reasonable theological explanations for why everything that happened was deserved. The silence from heaven settles in for what feels like an unbearable duration. And at the end of it all, God says to the adversary's representatives, the friends who spoke what sounded like reasonable doctrine, "You have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has." The test produced the wrong result, not for Job, for the adversary's theory. Job came through having demonstrated that the category God described was real. There is no one on earth like him. The test confirmed it. And the adversary's campaign against a person whose essential nature he fundamentally misunderstood produced not the destruction of that person's faith, but the demonstration of exactly what God had said was there. The army did not win, because the target was not who the army was designed to defeat. For those who want to understand more about how to walk consciously in the frequency that confused the adversary's strategy, there is exclusive material in the description and the pinned comment. 3 sacred frequencies narrated by the Watcher himself, 396H, 639H, and 963H, along with a complete ebook and full audiobook. If what you have heard so far is landing somewhere real, that material was built for exactly where you are. Now I need to take you into something more specific about how the adversary constructs his campaigns, because understanding this is what will allow you to read your own history differently. His strategy against any chosen soul operates in phases. The first phase is isolation, not physical necessarily, relational. The systematic erosion of the connections that would provide outside perspective and support. It does not happen dramatically. It happens through small frictions, misunderstandings that escalate, seasons where being around people feels harder than it should, the quiet withdrawal from relationships that once were sustaining. The goal of isolation is not loneliness for its own sake. The goal is to remove the mirrors, to take away the people who could reflect back to you who you actually are when the internal narrative starts telling you something different. Isolated people believe things about themselves that connected people would immediately identify as lies. You have been through seasons of that isolation. And you know what I am describing because you felt it not as an attack but as circumstances. Things just got difficult with people. Energy was low. Connection felt like effort. And the quiet descended. That was not bad luck. That was phase 1. The second phase is redefinition. Once the mirrors are removed, the alternative narrative about who you are has room to settle. Not through dramatic accusation, but through the accumulated weight of small suggestions. You are too much. You are not enough. What you thought was purpose is actually arrogance. What you thought was calling is actually delusion. What felt like divine assignment is actually just you wanting to feel special. These thoughts do not announce their source. They present themselves as self-awareness, as clarity, as the reasonable conclusion of a person who is being realistic about themselves. And they are calculated to produce one specific outcome: a person who stops, who decides that the assignment was imagined, who puts down what they were carrying because the carrying itself has been redefined as evidence of a problem rather than evidence of a purpose. The third phase is the substitution. Once isolation has removed the mirrors and redefinition has introduced a new story, the adversary offers an alternative. Not always a dramatically wrong alternative. Sometimes something that looks like relief, like finally making sense, like a version of existence that does not carry the particular weight that comes with being what you actually are. It looks like settling, like being reasonable, like maturity, and it is designed to be accepted in the moment of maximum exhaustion, when everything you have been carrying has been made to feel like a burden you chose unnecessarily, when the silence from heaven has been interpreted as confirmation that the assignment was never real. When the cost of continuing seems disproportionate to any visible evidence that the continuing matters. That is when the offer arrives, and you did not take it. I need you to understand what that means. There is a figure in Hebrew tradition called an Am Haaretz, a person of the land, ordinary, uncelebrated, not standing in the courts of kings or speaking in the gatherings of scholars, just present, just there. Just doing the ordinary work of being alive in the specific place they occupy. And the rabbinical tradition says something remarkable about these people. It says that the world is sustained by them, not by the famous, not by the celebrated, not by the ones whose names are remembered, by the ones who simply show up, who simply continue, who simply live with integrity in the unremarkable details of their unremarkable days. You do not need to be famous to be holding something that matters. You do not need visible impact to be carrying weight that is real. The Am Haaretz sustains the world not by performing sustaining, but by being who they are in the place they occupy. And the adversary's army was not defeated by a dramatic counteroffensive. It was not defeated by superior spiritual force or elaborate prayer, or the execution of some specific warfare strategy. It was defeated by your refusal to stop being who you are. That is what he had not seen before. Not your performance, your nature. Now let me bring you to the moment I have been building toward since the first sentence. This is the climax of what this transmission is about. Revelation chapter 12 describes a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fight against the dragon and his angels, and the dragon is cast down. And then verse 11 says something that reveals exactly how the victory was accomplished. They triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Testimony. The Greek word is martyria, not declaration, not prayer, not spiritual exercise, evidence. The testimony that defeated the adversary was not spoken words. It was demonstrated reality. The lived, embodied, unspoken evidence of a life that continued being what it was despite every force designed to make it become something else. You do not have a testimony because you declared yourself victorious. You have a testimony because you have a history. A specific, real, documented history of seasons that were designed to produce a certain kind of person, and the evidence that they did not produce that person. That is your testimony. And testimony, according to this text, is what overcomes the adversary. Not superior force, not impressive spiritual gifts, not the kind of faith that declares mountains moved before they move. The lived evidence of a soul that was assigned a nature and kept it. The army was not equipped for that. Every strategy in his playbook was designed for a different target, for the person that the pressure was supposed to produce, for the hardened version, the bitter version, the closed version, the person who eventually takes the offer and settles. You did not become that person. So the army has been fighting someone who does not exist, and armies that fight the wrong target eventually exhaust themselves. The defeat was not yours to engineer. It was not the product of anything you did actively or consciously. It was the product of who you refused to stop being. And that refusal, sustained across every season that tested it, across every moment the offer was extended, across every night when the silence was so loud it felt like confirmation of the worst thing you feared about yourself, that refusal is what he has never seen before. Not in exactly this form. Not in you. I need to leave you with 3 things that are practical before this ends. The first is that your most significant weapon going forward is not something you need to acquire. It is something you already demonstrated you have. The nature that confused his strategy is not something you developed through discipline or prayer or spiritual effort. It was placed in you before you knew it was there. It survived everything that was designed to remove it, and it will continue to function the same way it has always functioned. Not through your performance of it, but through your persistence in being who you actually are. The second is that the exhaustion you have felt in the hardest seasons was not spiritual weakness. It was the weight of a target that the adversary put everything into hitting. The degree of what came against you is the measurement of what you carry. Armies do not mass against things that are not worth massing against. The scale of the opposition is information about the significance of what it was opposing. The third is this: he cannot build a new strategy in real time. He can adapt tactics. He can shift approaches. But a fundamental intelligence failure, a campaign built on a wrong assumption about the core nature of a target, cannot be corrected by adjusting the edges. It requires a complete reassessment, and he does not have unlimited time for reassessment, which means the specific window you are in right now, the window immediately following the failure of his most concentrated campaign against you, is not the dangerous time you might assume it is. It is the moment of maximum strategic disorientation for what has been working against you. Walk forward in what you have always been, not into battle, into what was always coming, into what has been prepared on the other side of what just failed. The army did not win. It never could have, because it was fighting someone it did not understand. Write 777 in the comments if what you just received named something that has been true about you for longer than you have had language for it. For those ready to go deeper into the frequencies that align with the nature we have been describing, the material in the description and pinned comment was made for exactly this. 3 frequencies narrated by the Watcher, 396Hs, 639Hs, and 963Hs, along with a complete ebook and full audiobook. Everything you need to begin inhabiting what this transmission revealed. Share this with someone who has been carrying more than anyone around them knows and has never been told what that carrying actually means. And click on the video appearing on your screen right now. What follows this transmission connects directly to where your story goes from here. Together, we are stronger.